When Masters of the Universe Origins hit retail, it did so with what's called a TV driver or centerpiece item, Castle Grayskull. The same as in the vintage era. Castle really does, Big Lebowski the line. And the Castle for Origins, like the figures, was basically a one-to-one scale to the original figures, albeit the idea was with more articulation, more deco hits, and more features. Now, it's very, very different from something like the Masters of the Universe Classics Castle Grayskull, not only because this was sold online and was not sold at retail, and I'm going to swing back to that point in a minute, but it has kid-friendly features. It's not designed for collectors. It was designed for children. Sure, collectors might buy it. That's awesome. But it's basically in scale with other playsets sold at retail at a price point that's also competitive and comparable. Now, granted, it is a lot of fun, and it is something that collectors would have a lot of joy playing with, and it's very compatible with the old figures and almost any He-Man line. There's lots of inside, outside play value, a nice vintage style box that would appeal to collectors, and it even includes an exclusive figure that wasn't released yet in the line, Sorceress. You had to get her first in her Temple of Darkness white version before they released her at retail. Now, when I say this was at retail, it's also important to note it was part of a planogram, a full assortment of items where you have low price, mid price, and bottom shelf high price items. All retail lines are sold like this. You don't just sell in one standalone item. And it retailed for about $80, although now I think it goes for a few bucks less than that. You can pick it up on Amazon for a discount. And as I said, it also included what at the time was about a $14 figure. Now they're $20, but again, so you've got a, $80 castle with a $14 figure, so it's like a $60 castle. Fast forward to today, and a new playset is being offered by Mattel, Eternia, the Three Towers, which is kind of the ultimate holy grail for a lot of collectors since we didn't get to it in the old day because it was really hard to find. It came out the tail end. The new version is going to be available for anyone who wants it. It really does fill a hole in a lot of people's collection, and it's one of the reasons why I really do think it's going to succeed with its pre-sale. Now, a lot of people have been, huffing and puffing about the price point, saying, whoa, $550, that's a lot, especially when you could just, get Castle Grayskull for $80. This is like way, not comparable. Well, like most things, it comes down to retro blasting and their giant box of big blocks. No, I'm just kidding. It comes down to MOQ. I've talked about this a lot, the minimum order quantity, and how this relates to selling an item online or at retail. Now, the MOQ is the minimum amount, but obviously when you place something at mass retail, you're going to be able to sell a lot more. And this is the same thing we experience when we go to, say, like a club store, right? Like Costco, and you can get items in bulk and spend less money compared to what you would get if you bought it at the Food Lion or Albertsons or something. That giant jar of yummy, yummy mayonnaise is the same price as a tiny squirt bottle that you would buy at a convenience store or grocery store. So because you're buying in bulk, you get a discount. And with a retailer like Walmart that has literally thousands of locations throughout the US, well, that's a lot of buying power. And the more buying power, the less expensive an item is. It's very much like the Costco situation, or really any consumer or any company that is buying things in bulk. You're always given a discount the more you buy. I mean, it's economics 101. The factory charges less when they can produce more because there's less lead time between switching over between production of items. If they can keep doing one item, they prefer that, so they'll charge less. So while Castle Grayskull may have retailed for about $80, and that's, pretty good price point for a retail big, item under the tree or birthday gift that's on the bottom shelf, you can't compare this. It's not apples to apples when you're looking at something sold online at a very, very tiny MOQ compared to what mass retail can do. All right, so yes, looking at Eternia, it's not that much more plastic than Castle Grayskull. Yes, it's 3 towers versus 2 shells of a castle. You've got the monorail, you've got, other aspects of it, but it's not at retail. And if retail could take it, it would probably be much closer to the Castle Grayskull price point. But as you've noticed, the MotU presence at retail, while it's absolutely maintaining, it has shrunk from about 5 feet to 2 feet, with a lot of items going away from clearance. It looks like it is going to stick around for a while, but like any line sold at retail, it has to navigate the needs of retail, which includes a retail margin, space on shelf, velocity requirements, which means the number of units sold per week. It has to earn its keep, if you will. Any brand does, and a brand that doesn't is quickly delisted and replaced. On the other hand, when you can sell something online directly to consumers or directly to collectors, you bypass retail, which means you don't have any of those restrictions, but you're going to sell way fewer because you're not exposed to children and parents being on the retail shelf. Now, I've been very lucky to be in the toy industry for quite a while and to work on some of the best brands out there. Brands that have huge fandoms and very, passionate consumers behind them, if you will. We even found a way to sell a pink Batman to them. That came out of a bet, but that's a story for another time. Besides working on all of these great brands, I've had the chance to work with fans of all of these. And I can tell you, hands down, for every brand I've worked on, Voltron, Back to the Future, DC, Marvel, Disney, Ghostbusters, there are no fans like He-Man fans. He-Man fans are more passionate, more aggressive, more vocal, but also more willing to step up and fund items than any other fan base I have ever had the privilege to work with. And I can tell you that hands down from working in the toy industry for over 20 years on so many brands and doing a lot of direct collector product and face-to-face time. So while you see mega brands like Star Wars have items that are up directly for collectors on things like HasLab, well, Star Wars is, obviously one of the biggest brands in the world, but these items have not gone forward. I mean, there's various reasons for that. Even Cookie Monster didn't make it, and Sesame Street is huge. With MotU, it's different. I have seen time and time again MotU fans stepping up to the proverbial plate and funding things that we thought would never happen in a million years. Because He-Man fans are. I think it comes from the aspirational nature of the brand, the idea that you can go from just being, a normal person to this giant bulked up He-Man. Now, as far as the price and how expensive it is, well, there's a direct relationship between the extremely high cost of materials that have skyrocketed in the last 5 years, as well as the huge jump in labor costs. Both of these are what drive the price of items that continue to, go up and up. I'll be doing a video on some retail items comparing the same item now from one 20 years ago in a few weeks from now. But going back to Eternia, does it feel like a $550 item? Well, I suppose, like Obi-Wan says, it depends on your point of view, but based on the very low quota, and I mean that compared to items at retail that sell in the hundreds of thousands, when you're selling a couple thousand, and look at HasLab for an example of how many units usually go with a HasLab item. They did 5,000 sail barges. They're struggling to hit 9,000 Ghost Rider cars. Toy companies are not, and I repeat, not trying to gouge their customers on things like this. And that's a huge misconception out there because it sort of speaks from collectors thinking, how much we're the center of the universe, and they're not. Companies are setting these prices based on a profit margin formula required across the board for all items, which is set by shareholders, the people who own the company, the people who put up the money for the company to function in the first place. They come first and foremost. So the idea that a company is going to gouge customers on this tiny item that sells only a few thousand units, honestly, is completely off the mark. These items are not margin drivers. They don't move the stock price. They really don't hit anything other than being a PR driver. And toy companies do PR drivers all the time. Items that aren't really meant to sell a lot of units, but are meant to increase awareness of the brand and drive people back to retail. Sort of that trickle-down effect, where if you can get people to buy into this large collector item, they're most likely going to buy more of the smaller items, the basic figures at retail, to complete their collection. That's what it's about. So really, anything at retail is where the money is made. That's where the stock price is set. That's where, anything that really hits the company happens. When things are sold online directly to collectors, it's done as a way to get them out there because it's really difficult to place these type of items at retail because of the size and price point. But it's not to gouge. They're not charging more for these items. They're charging the bare minimum they can charge to hit that basic margin requirement. So people saying things like, oh, well, the sail barge should have been sold at retail. Where are you going to put this? Have you seen a planogram recently? It's not like it's something like a television. People compared that to saying, oh, well, they sell giant TVs. They could sell giant Eternia sets or giant sail barges. But the answer is no. TVs have a much wider audience than sail barges and Eternias. While we are very passionate, there's a very tiny amount of us versus the number of people who buy televisions. And no, you can't just stick it in the back room and say, oh, well, why don't you do a ticket like with bicycles or something? Because the back rooms are also allocated like the front of store with the planogram. There's only a certain amount of space and it's already pre-allocated. There's not a space to just stick a bunch of sail barges. So yes, $550, it may seem like a high price, but in today's modern a-go-go world in 2022 with the high price of material, I promise you are not being gouged. And I am not, I've gotten a lot of slack, people saying I'm, just speaking up for the toy companies. This is the toy companies going above and beyond to serve you, is what you're seeing with things like Eternia. There's no other way to get it to you. So when you see things like this, I urge you to support it if you want it. All right, well, I hope this video clarified why the price is at where it's at from a logical business industry standpoint, not an emotional standpoint. All right, please do share this video with others. It's the best way to support this channel. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.